Do you want to be able to jump into group conversations more easily? You're sitting there, there's people talking, maybe a group of 3 or 4, and you're just standing there or sitting there in the group like, I don't know what to say right now. Should probably say something, but I don't know what. You ever been in that situation? I mean, who hasn't? I used to live in that place. And a lot of clients that I work with live in that place. And there's a way out. In fact, I was just recently sitting in a car. There was 5 of us, 2 in the front, 3 in the back. And the guy next to me was the guy that I used to be. We was about a 40-minute drive each way. We drove to a thing and came back later. And he must have said 2 things the entire car right there and back. And I'm smiling because I love him. And I'm just like, oh, I know what it's like, you know? And it doesn't mean he doesn't have things to say. It's not like you don't have things to say. There's just like something just shuts down in you. So let's talk about how to break that. So I was in the back of the seat of the car, and the 2 people in the front were kind of talking back and forth, and there just wasn't much engagement with us in the back. And you can just try to say, I should just say something. Let me just ask a question of somebody. But then, A, you just pressure yourself and you don't actually have a conversation. Or B, you just end up asking something that's like boring that you don't care about. So what I teach in my social mastery course inside of Confidence University, or at my live event around conversation mastery, is you gotta find, like, what are you most interested in asking? So there's a couple ways to jump in. Let me give you some tips right now, some very practical strategies. One, actually, before we get into what to say, you have permission to speak. No matter what, like, don't filter out, I don't know if my ideas or my questions or me is good enough. Fuck that. Just say something. So number 1 is you have permission. Give yourself permission. 2, just say anything. Anything is better than nothing. So we're sitting there in the car. I'm quiet. The guy next to me is quiet. And I'm like, okay, I know how this goes. I can either sit here for the next 45 minutes in silence, which maybe I want to do, but in that case I didn't. So let me just say something. That's tip number 2, is just lower your your bar for how great it needs to be, and just say something. So they were in the front seat. They were talking about Thailand. The guy one of the driver in the passenger seat had been to Thailand, lives in Thailand for months. The driver's like, yeah, my parents go out there every year. And I'm like, I don't know anything about Thailand. But all of a sudden they talk about riding scooters in Thailand, and how it first feels chaotic and dangerous, but then you get used to it. And I was like, wait a minute. So you're listening for topics, and then what can I say or ask about that topic? So he says scooters in Thailand. When you hear scooters in Thailand, what are the first 3 things that come to your mind? Just right now as you're watching this video, come up with them. 1, 2, 3. The first 3 things, no matter how random, how tangential, it doesn't matter. You got them? What are your 3? The faster you can come up with this stuff, I mean, it's a skill, it's a muscle, so you just get better at it. The first couple things that came to my mind, 1 is people wearing those masks on their face because of pollution. So I could have asked about, like, hey, what's the pollution like, masks on their face. Another thing that came to my mind is riding scooters in Mexico, which I've done a number of times. I love to ride scooters in Mexico. But then a third thing came to my mind, and this is where you could just say something like, oh, I've ridden a scooter in Mexico, and that's fine. Or, oh, hey, did it feel dangerous to ride a scooter? Because when I rode a scooter in Mexico, it felt fairly dangerous, especially the time I was intoxicated. Probably not a great idea in retrospect. But I said something even more interesting. And if you're wondering how to say something even more interesting, you just say what's interesting to you. So that's what I did. So I thought, scooters in Thailand. Oh, scooter ride in Mexico. Oh, I've done some stuff that was, in retrospect, a little risky to my physical safety. And I thought, then I just had an interesting thought. I said, isn't it interesting? I just said this in the car. I was like, oh yeah, I've done a scooter ride in Mexico. Isn't it interesting how before the scooter ride, I'm not feeling nervous at all. I'm not anxious at all. Even though driving intoxicated in a scooter in Mexico is probably more of a risk, then, and yet when it comes to approaching someone or starting a conversation, I could be terrified of that rejection. Isn't that interesting? And I just said that into the car. And then boom, a conversation. People are like, oh yeah, this and that. And the guy's like, oh, I have a theory about that. And here's what I think about rejection. And then it led to a really interesting conversation. So let's recap. 1, you're sitting there, you don't know what to say. Step 1, give yourself total permission. I can say whatever I want. Step 2, say something. Lower the bar and just say something. It's a question or a statement. 3, what's the question or statement about? Listen to what's being said and then associate just whatever comes to your mind. 1, 2, 3. And if you want to build this muscle, everywhere you go when you're listening to people having conversations, just quiz yourself. Like after the conversation, like, oh, they were talking about blank. I didn't know what to say. Well, what are 3 things that come to mind for me? And build that muscle, build that practice. Awesome. So keep watching videos in this channel about conversation confidence, about confidence in general. The more you learn, the more you're going to grow. Share your comments below. What are you finding most valuable? What do you most want to learn from me in future videos? I'm making a lot these days. And keep watching. Just watch the next video. If you're going to binge watch something, this is going to be better than Netflix, because at the end of an hour or 2, you are going to be equipped to do so much cool shit in the world versus just sort of feel empty and hollow after a Netflix binge. Awesome. Thanks for being with me. Until we speak again, may you have the courage to be who you are and to know on a deep level that you're awesome. Oh, and then in the next video, I'm going to answer, why am I shooting this video in an airport? All right. Talk to you soon.